Welcome. Good morning to our today's webinar, our special webinar, SAP integration in SharePoint Online. It's a special webinar because we contacted our customers who are using ERP Connect services right now. So our solution for SharePoint on premises. And what we want to show you in this webinar is to give you options or show you options when SharePoint on premises is not anymore. ERP Connect services is announced with end of support end of next year. And as you know, everything is going to the cloud. So we are also going this path and have a new connector, Unio, who has more or less same features or possibilities, or even more than ERP Connect services. So I want to first demonstrate the current state in ERP Connect services, what you have now, and then switch to Office 365 SharePoint Online and show you how these integration scenarios could be handled here in the cloud environment from SharePoint Online, Microsoft Power Platform, maybe Nintex Automation Cloud. Some of you are using Nintex, I know. And that's the plan for this webinar. Maybe then it's clearer for you. Where do you want to go? I mean, this is no advertising webinar. We want to just to give you a bit information how it all develops around cloud and how you could go on after SharePoint on premises is dismissed sooner or later. Okay, that's me, Christian Tauchmann. Some of you in the call or in the webinar probably know me from support requests and so on. I'm at Theobald Software since not since 15 years, but since 2015. Quite some time. I'm working mainly on the topic the webinar is about, SAP integration, SAP process integration, which is a certain branch within our product portfolio. It's about integrating SAP processes with other platforms such as Nintex, Power Platform, SharePoint Online, SharePoint on premises. To sort it out a little bit, where to start is that's our product portfolio. And when we are talking about ERP Connect services, the solution you are using right now, we are here in the section process integration. And as you can see, ERP Connect services is not present here anymore. That has a reason. So it is announced now for end of support, end of next year, 2024. This has a good reason for us technically. It's a big effort to keep this solution alive because it's completely based on a different technology than all our other connectors. It's a big effort for us to administer and add new features. So end of support 2024 does not mean the solution will not work anymore after this time. But of course, we won't develop any new features. And speaking of support, that's something we need to internally discuss how we will go on by supporting this. If you still have maintenance for the software, we need to find a solution. But we will give you information about support requests for ERP Connect services sooner or later. That's something we need to discuss internally. But yeah, end of support, that's fixed next year. So what then? So what comes after ERP Connect services? What we offer here is Unio as a connector, especially for cloud environments. It does not only work with cloud environments, it also works within on-premises environments, company networks which are not in the cloud, which are not exposed to the web. Prerequisite is that a REST service can be consumed. I tell you a bit more about later when I go into the live demo. So everything is based on REST web services with Unio, which can be integrated in other environments. For example, as I said, the Microsoft Power Platform is a powerful tool or platform to trigger these REST services and to build your workflows. That's something I want to demonstrate. And yeah, but there are also other possibilities. We'll give you a couple of examples. But before we have a closer look at Unio as a solution, how it works, how it can be integrated with Office 365, SharePoint Online, maybe I give you a little wrap up what we have now, what you are currently working with. So to build this connection from ERP Connect services in SharePoint on-premises to the cloud, SharePoint Online. So let me end these presentation slides and go to our SharePoint on-premises demo environment. So yeah, that's more or less the current status you are in now. So you might be familiar with this. I'm here on the SharePoint on-premises central administration, where you see the ERP Connect services solution with all the with all the settings here, manage licenses, and so on. You are familiar with. What we offered with ERP Connect services were more or less a toolbox with different tools how to access and display SAP data and also write SAP data back. We had the web service designer I have here. So that's more or less a core instrument for Unio web services, as I said. In ERP Connect services, it was just a part of a toolbox of different tools. You could also in ERP Connect services create a web service and deploy it to the server and consume it from an app, from a workflow. That was possible. But besides that, there were other tools. There was or there is BCS connector where you can build your BCS models. It's more or less table queries. You can also call functions for reading data and display it on a site collection, this data. It's a live connection, so to say, to the SAP system. That was one of the tools. And what was used also often by our customers was the integration with Nintex. You see here, Nintex is installed here on this environment. It's a SharePoint 2019 single server. The common framework or common setting would be a farm, a SharePoint farm. So I know after SharePoint 2019, there was a subscription edition, which is also supported with ERP Connect services and which is probably used by some of you. And some of you might still use SharePoint 2016. since SharePoint 2010 is deprecated since a couple of years, I guess. But yeah, Nintex was one integration scenario which was used quite often by our customers. Just give you a little example. Here we have, I had built a workflow on a SharePoint custom list where some information is stored. Here it's a purchase, it's for purchase requisition creation, so a write back scenario. And when I have a look at the workflow, we had these dedicated Nintex workflow custom actions in SharePoint, or here in the Nintex workflow designer. That's something which does not exist like that in the cloud. So when I show you later possibilities in the cloud, we do not have dedicated Nintex workflow actions. We have the pure REST service endpoints, which can be integrated very flexibly in Nintex, in Microsoft Power Platform or Power Automate, Power Apps, or also other automation tools. But these dedicated custom actions do not exist anymore. That's something you should be clear of, and Nintex does not offer it identically in their Nintex Automation Cloud. There are other ways. They have an extensions framework where these web services can be uploaded. I give you a little demo later how that works in Nintex Automation Cloud, is it called now. The cloud solution offered by Nintex. That was one possibility to build these workflows with the custom actions for read and write access. Then what else? Then we had the possibility for integrating SAP access with Nintex Forms. That's also something which is working in the cloud. You can also do requests or table queries, function calls from Nintex Forms in Nintex for Office 365 or also in Microsoft Power Apps. There's also a possibility to populate such controls here, such drop-down controls, for example, or combo boxes with SAP data. And if you enter some information, you get these hits coming directly from this SAP object, from an SAP table, for example. This is one use case which was often used or is often used by customers who are using ERP Connect services. Here it works with some so-called JavaScript code. JavaScript includes in the Nintex form settings. Oops. Put this aside a little bit. Let me see if I have opened it. No, let it open here in the Nintex Forms Designer. Just that you know what I'm talking about. Here we had the possibility to enter some JavaScript code to access the backend SAP system, to run some queries. For example, here a table call is made to table MAKT, material data, and some more or less pretty simple JavaScript coding around. This is something which works in parts also in the cloud. So in Nintex for Office 365, we also have the possibility to call up a JavaScript code and use our JavaScript library. We have a dedicated new JavaScript library for Cloud Connector Unio. That's also possible. It's not supported within Power Automate or Nintex Automation Cloud. There's no way to call JavaScript code. That's not up to us. It's up to Microsoft and Nintex. That's something which is not supported in these platforms. But nevertheless, it can still be such scenarios can still be built by a different way, by calling up a service directly from the Unio connector and populate these fields. It's also a use case I show you later in the live demo. That's also possible in the cloud. Yeah, I would say that was more or less it, the possibilities. Here I also opened the external list from the BCS connector. That's was some out-of-the-box tool offered in ERP Connect services, the possibility to build these BCS models, deploy them to a site collection, and have these external lists here. And every time I refresh the page, I have refresh data. And that's something which is not out of the box supported with Unio in the cloud, but still you can populate custom lists with SAP data in SharePoint Online. That's still possible, but you would need to configure a workflow who manages the population of these fields, but it's possible. You can do this by building some data loops through a function call or a table query and populate these custom list fields. Yeah, so that's just a little wrap up what we have now in ERP Connect services. You are familiar with all these possibilities. Use one or maybe all of these possibilities, web services, these external lists, and Nintex workflow custom actions. How it looks now in the cloud, maybe give you a direct example before I show you how the connector itself works and the architecture and so on. I can show you directly, for example, this workflow here for purchasing requisition. How would a workflow like that or a scenario look in SharePoint Online? So let's close here my demo environment, my SharePoint on-premises demo environment, and go to my web browser. Let me see. Okay, that would be now the very same examples we just saw in ERP with ERP Connect services and SharePoint on-premises in the cloud in SharePoint Online. In this case, it's with Nintex, but it also works with Microsoft Power Automate or Microsoft Flow, formerly known. And in principle, it's more or less the same. You have your SharePoint custom list with certain information in it, and this information shall be posted to the backend SAP system. And as soon as you are creating a new entry in the list, the workflow will be triggered in the background. So that's how this scenario works. And yeah, the trick is here that we use Unio as a connector in the background in the workflow. Maybe quickly show you here the very same example with Microsoft Power Automate in this case. So as soon as I create a new list entry here, let me show you, I click on new, a little form opens here on the right hand side. It's so-called Power Apps Canvas app, which is directly integrated here in SharePoint Online. It could also be like a so-called model-driven app, which is separate from SharePoint Online and which can be called up from a mobile device, for example, a tablet or smartphone, I don't know. And what we have here now is a form built on this custom list, and I also use here the possibility to populate these fields directly with SAP data. So for example, when I enter here a material number and open here this drop-down box, you can see, okay, I get some hits which come directly from table material master data table MAKT from SAP. And I can choose now my material where the purchase requisition should be created on. Enter a plant, a quantity, choose a delivery date. And also here for the accounting, I have integrated a query to a certain list in SAP, which shows me the cost centers. And when I click in here, I did some filtering before directly in the service and can now choose my cost center here. And as soon as I click here on submit, this will be my workflow trigger and the information will be posted to the SAP system. Let's do this. So that was my workflow trigger. What is happening in the background? I guess I opened it before the webinar. So that would be my workflow running in the background. This is a Power Automate flow. And when I refresh here, it should be in status running now. Let's wait a second. It takes some time. You see, 4 days ago, I had a successful run of this workflow. It's still not started. Maybe let's go into edit mode and show you how the workflow is designed so that you get a better impression how this works in combination with Unio. It's actually a pretty simple workflow where we have this workflow trigger as soon as an item is created in the SharePoint Online list. Then we go through different steps here. It goes into an approval. This is also something you should be familiar with from SharePoint on-premises, native SharePoint workflow or Nintex workflow. And when I scroll down and only when some condition is fulfilled, then in the end, connector Unio will be called. It's more or less analog here than these Nintex workflow custom actions I showed before in ERP Connect services. In this case, it's a so-called custom connector. I uploaded to the Power Platform for this purchase requisition use case. So you can build your dedicated web services in the Unio designer. And then for every use case you have, be it a query or a write back scenario, you can upload these services to the Power Platform and use it in your workflows. So that's what I have done before. I uploaded the service to the custom connectors, and then let me open it. Here you can do your field mapping. That's also something you should be familiar with from ERP Connect services. When I open here the workflow, that's pretty similar. You had these workflow actions here, and also here you had to do your mapping to the tables and input information and so on. And it's more or less the same in principle what we do in the cloud. We upload the service, and here you can do your mapping. You can say, okay, PR header, for example, that's some fixed information. I write it, just type it in and have it like fixed as a fixed information in the connector settings. And you can, of course, also like assign information from the SharePoint list to the connector input parameters. we can also do some like conversion here. For example, replace some leading zeros, or just convert the date format, for example. Yeah, that's how it works more or less for the workflows. Here is the custom connectors. As I said, if you have the service in Unio, you upload it as a custom connector and can then use this custom connector in whatever workflow or setting you want to use it. That's special for Power Platform. Of course, you can call up the REST service endpoint wherever you want. It's not only a connector for the Microsoft Power Platform. It's pretty flexible. You can use it in your own built JavaScript apps, in Nintex, or even other workflow solutions. We also have a cooperation now with Webcon, process automation vendor from Poland, who also offer a solution for process automation, some designer. It's not connector only for Microsoft solutions. That's just some example. I also showed before in ERP Connect services how to populate data in a Power in a Nintex form. That's also something we can do here with a Power App form, for example. So let me show you here, Microsoft Power Apps. That's some example where I just more or less randomly built some table queries here in one little Power App form. For example, in this first field, a cost center service is triggered. That's also something I showed before in the use case for the purchase requisition, where I can just populate fields here, a drop-down box, or it would also be possible with a combo box. And I can also build up some wildcard search. I can search for a material number, for example. That's something which is also a use case widely used by our customers who are already in the cloud with Unio. And this is the settings are done in Power Apps. Let me also show you an example how this could look in with Nintex for Office 365. So what you see here now is a Nintex form for Office 365, and here it's also possible to populate these fields. So as I said before, we are using here in Nintex for Office 365, that's still possible. JavaScript code. We have JavaScript code here, which is called in the Nintex form for Office 365, and which also calls up some JavaScript library we provide, and also do some queries here to a certain, in this case, it's a certain Unio service that is called up in the background, and which brings up some fields which are defined in the service. So that's all done by Unio. And for the Power Apps example, that's the Power Apps Designer. And that's the example I want to show you. I wanted to show you, you saw it just live in the app. And these are the backend settings for this app. You have here, I have integrated different data sources here. As you can see on the left-hand side, I called up a service, once again, a Unio connector, custom connector in Microsoft Power Platform, which calls up a certain table information, table MAKT for material data, or CSKT for cost center data. And when I click here into the settings, I have I can do some low-code integration here and concatenate some fields and so on. That's actually pretty simple coding, which is done in the Power App setting. And then you are able to also populate these fields with SAP data. One of our customers, for example, has a cafeteria app and populates some fields also for cost centers to have some to calculate some expenses for the canteen. That would be some real life example customer is using, but there are endless possible scenarios. It goes through the whole SAP modules. It's not restricted to, I don't know, finance or any SAP module, because these tables and tables and objects are present in every SAP module. So there's no restriction here. That was more or less the one-to-one comparison. ERP Connect services to the cloud, SharePoint Online. What else? Maybe before I show you how the how Unio works as a solution, just a quick look to a Nintex Automation Cloud, because I showed you the Nintex workflow in SharePoint on premises. As you might know, Nintex also has a workflow or process automation solution in the cloud, which is called Nintex Automation Cloud. It's a cloud tenant where you have to subscribe to, and then you have also kind of a dashboard where you can create your services. And I just opened a simple workflow here. It's also the purchase requisition example. You have a start event. In this case, it's a Nintex web form you can design here in the Nintex Automation Cloud Designer, where you can say, okay, these are my entry. This is my entry data. The user enters in the form, in the web form, which can be opened from everywhere in the net, in the web. And here, once again, a couple of information is needed in SAP to create a purchase requisition. I also do a table call in the background. In this case, it's not via JavaScript. That's not supported, as I said, here in Nintex Automation Cloud. It's also like in Microsoft Power Apps. It's a direct table call or a service call from Unio. And I can configure the data source here and say, okay, these fields, this and this fields shall be displayed in the drop-down box. Currently, I think only one field is possible, but maybe in the next iteration, it will also be possible to display more than one table column. Currently, I don't know if it works in the preview. You see, when I go into preview mode, data is loaded here in this box, and I can also select from a list of material information coming directly from the backend SAP system. That's also possible here. And the workflow itself, it's also pretty similar as you have seen in Power Automate. In this case, it's Nintex is calling it extension. It's uploaded to the so-called extensions framework, and then it can be configured here. So just integrate it via drag and drop to the workflow designer and integrate it here with your field mappings. Also, you can assign here some fixed values, or you can map values from the form to the connector. So for example, I have assigned here the plant quantity, also delivery date with some date conversion, because yeah, as you might know also from SharePoint on premises, it was the same. You have if you push data to SAP, it must be in a certain format, and SAP, as you know, is special. It needs a certain date format and so on, or maybe leading zeros for some material data or material numbers. That can be all done. It's also supported, these conversions, in Nintex. And yeah, so these were more or less the examples I prepared for this demo, to show you how these scenarios could work within a cloud setting with Nintex, with SharePoint Online, Office 365. You have also a lot of flexibility here, a lot of possibilities. Let's come now to the core piece of Designer Unio. Maybe one slide here for, oops, sorry. For a better understanding, Unio is also yeah, on-premises solution, which is installed on a server environment. Access is more or less the same than for ERP Connect services. It's via REST, it's via RFC. The connection to the backend SAP system, some ports needs to be opened, and then we can access different SAP objects, for example, tables, function modules, transaction codes, and reports. These are the components, so to say, or the service types we provide with Unio. And then these services can be consumed from the cloud. We also offer possibility to tunnel this connection securely through a gateway. You can use the Microsoft on-premises data gateway or Azure Relay as a gateway solution to securely tunnel this connection, because it's from a security perspective, it's not yeah, recommended to open any network ports from your cloud client to the on-premises installation. So that's why we offer integration here. Nintex gateway, by the way, is also supported and can be used as a gateway here. And Unio, when it is installed, it comes with a designer which runs completely in the browser. Let me show you. So no designer needs to be installed locally on your local laptop. After the installation, you can directly open your designer, your Unio designer. And here you have to, before you can start creating your services, you need to create a SAP connection. That's also something, one of the first steps you do here in the Unio designer, create your connection to the backend SAP system. From a licensing perspective, it's not limited to a certain amount of SAP connections. So the license base would be the server where it's installed on, and Unio comes with two installations for a productive server and a test or demo server. And what's the default? The default state would be that we have a restriction here, how many services can be created. From a default state, it's 20 services that can be created after the initial installation, which is good for a couple of scenarios. And if you need more services, these can be licensed then. It's also possible to extend it, of course, not only use 20 services, but that's the default state. And after creating the SAP connection, do some initial settings here. For example, define your ports, enable TLS encryption. That's some technical settings in the background. You can start creating your services. Let's give you a little example how that would work. I create a service here live for material data. That would be the simplest case to just do a table query, search for some SAP connection. That's a pretty new demo system or newer one running on S/4HANA. Search for the table or for the abstraction type. That would be SAP table or view. Click on Save and Edit. It's already in use. Let's give it a different name. And now I can search for my table, say, okay, I want table Mara, for example. That's some master data table for material data. And have here my table columns, say, okay, I only want to extract a couple of them, not all. Enter a where condition or not, set a row limit. Maybe I limit it to 300, for example, and click on save. And that's it more or less. Now I have a working table service and can now search here in my dashboard for the service. I could now copy the service URL and run it in a REST client, for example, in Postman. Just copy paste and run the service. It would get back some results from SAP, as you can see. But we have also a run dialog here directly in the designer. You won't need to test it in some separate REST client. You can also click here on this little play button. Could optionally enter a where clause and run the service and get your results here. And that also works for function calls. Purchase requisition is the example we have here. That resembles a little bit to the Nintex workflow custom actions, but it's much simpler. The whole mapping works by just assigning to the fields you wish. You can say, okay, this field shall be exposed later in the web service as an entry value and say supplied by caller. And if you want to output any data, you can just say, for example, the return data shall be used as an output parameter. You can just click on this checkbox, and then all these fields from the result structure or result table will be displayed in the web service result body. So that's how it works. And as soon as I have created these services, I can upload them to the Nintex automation cloud extensions framework, to the Power Automate custom connectors. And yeah, we still have 5 minutes now for your questions. Let me see if there are any questions so far. If not, I still have a couple of minutes to show you something. No, it seems there are no dedicated questions, so I can use the last 5 minutes to maybe show you some more. So one thing which is a feature we did not have in SharePoint on-premises in ERP Connect services is the transaction feature. That's some interesting thing. You see it here in this architecture slide. It also allows to write back data to the SAP system. And the cool thing is here, you can run a transaction code directly in the web service designer, in the Unio designer, and parameterize it and use it as a web service for your process integration. Let me just quickly demonstrate it. I call it transaction MM01. That's for material master data creation, the transaction code. Just select my source system and select here transaction. Click on Save and Edit. And here I can enter the transaction code MM01, click on Start. And now you can see, okay, that's completely the same like entry screen as in the SAP GUI without opening the SAP GUI, of course. You can enter now here your information, demo material, for example. Enter some additional information, select a view. And I could now also enter a name and some other basic information and click on Save. And now I have on the fly created some material master data set in my backend SAP system. When I click now on Stop, I can click through the different GUI steps and parameterize it. Say, okay, this material field I want to have as an input parameter, and maybe from this entry screen, the material description, I could also give it a name, material description as an input parameter, and base unit of measure. I say, okay, I want to use the value from the recording and just leave it like that. Don't enter any information here. So that's an interesting feature because it allows to access your backend processes without configuring any function modules, BAPIs. When you are familiar with SAP, you know these BAPI calls or function calls can be tricky to configure sometimes if you are not familiar with the structure. And here, if you are familiar with the transaction in SAP, with the transaction code, you can just call it up, parameterize it, and then have your REST service endpoint you can use in your scenarios. The cool thing is that it also works with pretty complex transactions. For example, PA30, PA40 for personal administration. So employee onboarding scenarios or personal administration. These are pretty interesting scenarios because these allow you to configure your dedicated entry screens, your apps, to modify your backend personal data, also for personal administration. Yeah, we are almost done. I hope it was informative for you. It was a lot of information in a short time. Sorry for starting 10 minutes late because of the audio issues I had. Yeah, so if you have any questions regarding end of support, ERP Connect services, maybe want to do an evaluation of Unio, just contact us. You can download a trial from our website, a 30-day trial. You have our full support during this trial period, where we can also build a little POC if wished. And of course, you can contact us via our info email address or contact me directly, of course. Christian Tauchmann, if you still have my contact data from some support requests, for example, you can of course contact me directly. And yeah, I wish you a nice day, nice rest of the week, and I hope to hear from you. And don't hesitate to contact if you need to know more, or we can also organize a dedicated session for you to go into more in depth for your certain use cases. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.